thing. If you're new to the channel, I have to do this. The people, they're expecting it. If they don't get the two claps, it doesn't feel right to them. So I always have to do the two claps. Just putting it out there, not just warning you. But I'm here with Cristina Gomez. Absolutely.
Hi, Colin.
Amazing. Yeah, what's going on? And she's the host of UFO News. She's done quite a bit in a short time, in my opinion, because I know how hard it is to grind at YouTube. And yeah, you're doing a lot of cool things. Like I told you before off camera, I've been seeing a lot of UFO stuff popping up. And when I saw your channel and what you were doing, I was like, let me just reach out, because I want to just start reaching out to people who are within our realm and just start having conversations, because it just makes sense to.
The climate right now with UFOs is unbelievable. It's hitting the news almost every single day. The politics in the US is getting pretty insane, and it is a bipartisan issue. So just if you haven't been following it along, you can get lost, but looking at it, it's really interesting to see how far we've come, how much the stigma has been removed in the last year alone. The stigma is still there for sure, but we're able to talk about this much more openly. And it seems that now, if you ask someone, hey, do you believe in UFOs? Do you believe in ET? People just shrug their shoulders. They're like, yeah, duh, come on, get with the program. 10, 15 years ago, they'd be like, I can't really talk about this right now. Come to my place. Let's have a little bit of dinner and we can talk about it privately, but not in a public setting the way that we can now.
Yeah, it's very, very different than it was. For me, I've been, looking into this stuff on YouTube for decades, right? It's like 20 years. Like you've been looking here and there, paranormal, this, that. And it used to be so accessible, especially via YouTube. It was so accessible. And then at some point, it just all went away. People got very silent about it. And it is mind blowing to see, at first it was just Joe Rogan, and you're like, yeah, it's Joe Rogan. He's having a good time. He's with his friends having drinks. Like, of course they're going to talk about this. But now you're seeing senators, you're seeing congressmen, you're seeing the president of the United States addressing UFOs, like multiple presidents of the United. Obama talked about it a little bit. Hillary wasn't the president, but she's been talking about it. Trump has talked about it. It's mind blowing to see, especially what I want to talk to you about in terms of the disclosure, the disclosure task force that has come to be. Do you know about this whole thing?
Yes, of course. And before we get into that, just one more thing about presidents. Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter have had UFO sightings that they spoke about publicly years after the incident. So just another lore to the whole thing. It's really interesting how in the United States and in politics, especially with presidents, there's always been this interest. From Nixon to Carter, the Clinton family as a whole, Obama, the Bushes. It's when you look into it, you realize this pattern that there's always been this interest. I believe it was Bill Clinton that attempted to get into Area 51 and he was denied. Obama asked questions about UFOs and wasn't given much information that he was able to release publicly. Trump has been asked about UFOs time and time again before his presidency and during his latest term. And he kind of gives like these nuanced answers, but it does display that they're somewhat in the know. They're not ready to share with the public just yet. But referring to the task force, the one that was created by Anna Paulina Luna, one that you're referring to, correct?
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, so there's a lot that has been happening there recently, and Luna got a lot of publicity when she was on Joe Rogan just about a week or two ago talking about interdimensional beings, and that she has been in skiffs where she saw pictures that she believes are genuine. She has spoken to people that are in the know with this topic. Trump has mentioned the same, that he has spoken to pilots that have relayed their UFO encounters to him. But I think the main person that has really stolen the spotlight in terms of politics is Eric Burleson. He has become the spokesman for UFOs. He's done so many interviews, so many podcasts, and he's dropped some really crazy information that I didn't expect really anyone in the government to be dropping publicly. When we're addressing the task force created by Luna not too long ago, she's not only looking into UFOs, but also into David Epstein and a few other things. But of course, my interest is okay, what are you doing about UFOs? What information can we get? And in May, she placed this timeline on her Twitter that this was going to be UFO week. It was like the second week of May. We're going to get skiffs. We're going to get a hearing. We're going to get this, that, and the other. You guys better be excited. And anything to do with government, you're always left disappointed. You're given a bone instead of the whole steak, which is, I'm hungry. Okay. I want everything. I want a side of mashed potatoes as well, maybe some fries. But the reason behind that, and one person that's really been following up with this is Mac Laszlo from Ask a Poll, where he's talking to congressmen in these short 2-3 minute segments where he asked Luna, okay, well, where's the hearing? When are we going to get it? It was postponed from May to July, July to August. Now we're getting it maybe in September. But the big reason to these halts in this upcoming hearing, which will be the third UFO focused hearing, it was her response was people are getting the skiff flu. They're ready to go, they're scheduled, and then the last minute they're like, "Oh, I'm sick. Oh, my dog died." And that's actually a quote from the Joe Rogan interview. And then they never show up again. And they have
Hmm.
witnesses ready to come, like ready to give their testimony. But then there's this ulterior narrative that we're kind of seeing lately that witnesses don't want to come forward. One of them is a now very famous UFO whistleblower, Michael Herrera, who gave a very short video that he posted on Twitter a few weeks ago stating, if you're a whistleblower, I warn you against coming forward. You will not be protected. They do not care about you. Congress already has all the information. They're just not coming forward with it. Those are his words.
Wow.
But then we're getting other whistleblowers like Roderick Castle III, who just very recently came up. He did an interview with UAP Gerb just a few days ago, and he's relaying his encounters that he saw a black triangle during the Phoenix Lights incident, but there were black ops involved, and it's actually taking place in 29 Palms, California, and not in Phoenix, Arizona, which something to know about the Phoenix Lights is that it was actually seen in Nevada and Arizona. So thinking about California, it's just right next to those two states. It's not too strange. You would be seeing that across several state lines. But what I'm getting at is we have names, we have dates and some sorts of locations of where these took place, but we haven't gotten a hearing yet. People's hopes are very high for September, but the way that things are panning out, because it was meant to happen in May, I don't know if we're going to get one. And will it be as explosive as the first hearing back in July of 2023, where David Grusch dropped the words non human biologics? Because the second hearing just wasn't as big as the first one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you just dropped a whole lot there. I'm gonna have to look into Michael Herrera. I've heard the name, but that other name you said, Roderick the Third. What was his last name?
Yes,
Castle.
Roderick Castle the third. Yes, you
Okay,
got it right.
okay,
Yes,
perfect.
it's brand new. And the thing is that like if you're not deeply involved in the UFO phenomenon or even just like UFO Twitter, which I recommend just eyeballing it, but don't get too involved because that is a cesspool in itself. But kind of looking on the sidelines, there's a lot of very interesting information that I do try my absolute best to cover every single day on my website at ufonews.co and also on my YouTube channel, which I try to give like bite-sized information, keeping people up to date in the know as to what's going on because it's so easy to get lost. And then you're like, okay, forget it. I don't want to know. I don't care. I'm not interested because it's just too much information.
That's what I was
So,
gonna say. It's
yeah.
the big thing is, you're talking about it's hard to follow along. It's hard to keep up. Even if you do follow along and you do keep up, you still get lost. I mean,
And it's by
it's
design.
you think so?
If we A good example of this is actually the mysterious drone incident that took place in November of last year up until present day. This is in New Jersey. It follows the same blueprint as Roswell. This is something that everyone's familiar with. We all know about the Roswell case, right? And that took place in 1947, what people don't actually know about that incident is that it was buried. No one knew about it until the 70s. And
Mhm.
when Stan Friedman, this guy right here at the bottom, was like, something's fishy's going on over there. Let me check it out. Let me interview these people. And he's the one that actually brought it back to life. But a big reason to why it was dropped and people weren't interested was because it was saturated with conclusions and ideas and information that all contradicted each other, that it got so overwhelming for the people, for the public, that they just dropped it. And then that's one of the best ways to get people uninterested. The exact same thing happened with the New Jersey drone incident. I'm putting drone in quotation marks because that's the explanation that the media gives it, but it's not the explanation that the locals have seen it as.
Mhm.
In that case, and I'll make this brief because it's a lot of information, but when the incident first took place during Thanksgiving weekend of last year, 2024, people were seeing these very strange objects in the sky, completely silent, sometimes hovering very close to people's homes, almost like a type of surveillance. And so then the local sheriff department got involved. They couldn't get answers. And also, what's really strange about this incident is that it's against the law to interfere with drones. We didn't at that time. The sheriff department didn't have technology to interfere with these objects, so to bring them down, which I think is very dangerous in itself. But
Mhm.
the sheriff department, they wrote a statement claiming that these are a threat, these are dangerous, and something we can do about it. They send it over to the White House. The White House says, oh, they're not ours, they're not foreign adversary, but they're not a threat. Then in December, so a month later, the White House drops a statement by the FAA, the DoD, and a few other departments that nothing to see here. These are FAA authorized objects, drones. But
Mhm.
no one's able to capture these. No one's able to intercept these. Locals in New Jersey, according to certain testimony, they would get their commercial drones, try to fly up to these objects in the sky, and their batteries would immediately die.
Huh, wow, I didn't know that.
Keep that in mind because it's going to be very relevant a little bit later. And some of these objects were the size of an SUV, size of a truck. These are
Mhm.
massive drones, mysterious drones,
Yeah.
right? Very, very strange. And then the new administration comes in because this happened during the Biden administration. Then, when Trump took office, his Pentagon spokesman said they are not the enemy. But we haven't really gotten any further questions. And now, then this incident just kind of revived itself like a zombie almost, where DNI, the Director of National Intelligence,
Mhm.
Tulsi Gabbard, gave an interview to the Pod Force One podcast, stating that even though she has so many agencies under her, about 18 agencies like the
Yeah.
CIA and so on, she still has questions, excuse me, about the New Jersey drone incident. She knows the official explanation, but she was kind of hinting that she wasn't buying it. So
Yeah.
that revitalized the interest in this whole topic, which I absolutely love because there's so much to it. And then another little detail to why it gets a little convoluted while we're getting so much information. It's not ours, it's not theirs, it's not foreign adversary, it's not the enemy. Wait, no, actually, it is ours. Wait, I do have questions. Wait, I don't have questions. People are saturated with information and they're like, okay, forget it. I don't want to know. I don't
Mm.
it, my brain can't
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
occupied with this information. Well, something worth noting about this is that Lockheed Martin has been spoken about rather recently, especially mentioned by Ross Coulthart from News Nation. Um, Pertaining to New Jersey in particular, Lockheed Martin has a facility that actually specializes in drones, creating drones. And there's one of several. Another one's in Colorado, and another one is in California. Colorado had almost the exact same incident happen in 2019, something that was very quickly buried as well, and not that many people know about it. It
Ah.
wasn't remembered until this new incident took place. But if we look at the
Mm.
correlation between these facilities and the location of where these serious drone incidents took place, you're like, okay, maybe there's a connection between the two. Well, then you had different congressmen come forward. stating that, oh, it's an Iranian mothership. You had some stating, no, these are really our alien looking for nuclear weapons of some kind. Then you had others state,
Mm.
no, it's probably ours, it's probably drones. But there's I think a healthy viewpoint is always being open-minded but being skeptical, hearing what people have to say, but then obviously making up your own mind. What if we're dealing with a handful of different things? What if some of them are ours? Maybe some are for an adversary, and maybe some of them aren't necessarily human. That's something that's also worth considering that has been thrown around a lot, and that just adds another layer to the entire narrative. It just adds so much confusion because people don't always contemplate that it could be both.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's always a chance it could be non-human, especially with everything that we've been hearing, especially with how big the universe is and everything. I also, because I watch quite a bit of news because you have to when you're covering things. And there was one thing that kind of led me to believe that it could possibly be ours. And it was because Trump had a press conference where he was talking about releasing the F-47. It was this new jet. He was very proud of this new jet. And one thing he kept emphasizing, oddly emphasizing, he said, this thing right here, he's like, this can have as many drones as it needs. He's like, we've been testing it. It can have as many drones as it needs. He just kept bringing that up, like, just repeatedly, like Trump does. And right away, I was like, huh, they've been testing this thing secretly. And apparently, it has a capability to be in one place and send out a bunch of drones, as many as it needs. That made me think possibly that's what we were seeing in New Jersey. Then you tell me that Lockheed Martin actually has a facility and they're the ones that are helping with this jet. They're the ones that help make this jet, right? So that kind of shifts me to like, and I'm usually pretty out there with the ideas. I like to go interdimensional with my ideas most of the time, but that kind of leads me towards feeling like it could actually be ours. Now, Tulsi, she said she had questions because it was in multiple states. She's like, it wasn't just New Jersey. I remember her saying that in that interview.
And it
And
actually took place in different countries during the same time frame.
oh, really?
Germany, Denmark, and England.
Oh, I did not know that. That's interesting. I wonder. I wonder. It could be either. I was at one point I was leaning towards Trump bringing that up because he does talk very cryptically about things. Oddly, it's like he gets briefings and they say don't tell anyone. He goes, oh, I'll see. I'll see what I want to do. And he's like, oh, we'll see. Maybe I'll bring it up. Maybe I won't. We'll see. I'm the president. But yeah, it could be otherworldly. I mean, there's a lot coming out towards the otherworldly. And also, I mean, in actuality, there's more coming out towards interdimensional than there is towards otherworldly currently, which I find fascinating. And that would lead me to my next question of what do you think? Because we covered the task force, right? We'll talk about Grusch in a second, but you know, how much of this do you think is how much of this disclosure do you think is smoke and mirrors, like you're saying, saturating people with so much that they just pretty much extinguish their appetite for this type of thing? How much do you think it's real, and how much do you think is just kind of possibly the term useful idiot type of stuff going on that they're being fed?
That's something so difficult to answer, something that I think is on a lot of our minds of, okay, what's real, what's not, what's really going on. Looking at this from an optimistic viewpoint, for me, it's at least people are talking about this. People are being curious. People are asking questions. And at some point in our future, like our human society, ufology is going to be required for universities for so many future jobs,
Mm.
like being to travel the stars, to be an astrobiologist, an astrophysicist, to be an astronaut that's not already being taught. And interestingly enough, there are universities already teaching UFO courses, like Michigan, like a university in Michigan, a university in Texas, a college in Oregon. At some point it's going to be required. And it starts off with looking at the history. How did politics handle it? How have they interacted with us in previous years throughout history from 100 years ago to yesterday? So overall, just us talking about this is really important. It's very relevant. And then when you begin to dig up, like, okay, what's real, what's not real, I think it's healthy to have that mental type of skepticism.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, you have to. Here's where I go with it when I'm thinking about what's real and what's not. Now, are you familiar with Project Bluebeam?
Yes.
So Project Bluebeam kind of depends on the narrative that these aliens are from a faraway planet. It depends on that because, for those of you that don't know, eventually aliens would show up. It would be a fake invasion of sorts, and it would give the ability for the world to come together, government wise, army wise, everything, and kind of society wise, everything would become kind of a one world type of government. And you need Project Bluebeam to be aliens from a far out place. When I hear these people bringing up interdimensional stuff, I feel like that takes away from that narrative and it leans me towards them being truthful. I know it sounds so weird. It's like, oh, you hear interdimensional and then you think it's real, but it kind of leads me towards that because it starts touching on, and Luna, she actually brought this up. Congressman Eric Burley, he likes to be called Burley, apparently. He brought this up as well, where they start talking about angels and demons, and they're talking about the Bible. And Anna went on this long rant about the Book of Enoch, which got me very interested in that and reading that. So when I start seeing Tucker Carlson also touches on this same fact that it's interdimensional and they've been around for a long time, and the Book of Enoch also kind of verifies that same thing. The Bible doesn't, a lot of scripture does in a lot of odd ways verifies that they've been around for a very, very long time. So when I hear these people saying interdimensional, like Anna and Eric and Grusch and Jake Barber and all these different people and Jacques Vallée, I start to go, okay, I think these are legit people here. That's how I parse it out. That's just me.
No,
But I go,
I think that that's a really interesting viewpoint because from my perspective, thinking about Project Bluebeam, it's more of they want to confuse people using holograms. That was the idea
yes.
of Project Bluebeam. You would
Mhm.
think, right, just casually, that interdimensionals could connect to holograms if you wanted to portray them in that way
True.
as a possibility. So while you're saying this, Colin, I'm thinking, but hold on. Could there be a connection between the two? But aside from that, the interdimensional theory is something that has become more a recent conversation because 10, 20, 30 years ago, UFOs and ET was always seen as nuts and bolts, something very physical. Now we're jumping into almost this, obviously, the interdimensional, almost metaphysical kind of ideas.
Yeah.
And I think that narratives have changed over the decades on what we think these are. Is that by design, or are our minds finally opening up to new ideas and new physics? I don't have an answer to that, but that has been something that I've been thinking about rather recently.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely something to consider. I mean, even that question that you just brought up, could a hologram be put to something that's interdimensional? And I think definitely if it's physical, um, maybe not if it's, and again, I don't even know what this term means when I say non-physical. If it's something like an angel or a demon, could it actually be could a hologram actually be put on it? I'm not sure, but yeah, that is something to think about, that they could do the holograms either way. But
Yeah, and
I love the fact that you know about Project Bluebeam. I wasn't sure. I don't know how deep you go, right? I'm still feeling it out, but the fact that you know about that is amazing.
of course, I've been researching UFOs for quite a few years now, trying to look at everything that I possibly can and trying to speak to as many people as possible. I've interviewed Brandon Fugel and his team at Skinwalker Ranch, and
Mm,
they've postulated this idea of an other dimensional hypothesis could possibly be a reality. They think that it's actually quite a reality. And so when you have these different minds, different researchers, investigators, and so on looking into this, it seems that many people are coming to a very similar conclusion that we are dealing with an other interdimensional hypothesis here.
Yeah, yeah. Now, that was actually one of my questions because I found that very interesting. You talked to the owner of Skinwalker Ranch, and if you are in the tinfoil realm of things, you, of course, it's one of the first thing that comes up. UFOs come up first, Bigfoot, all of that fun stuff comes up. But then when you get really into it, you start learning about Skinwalker Ranch, and that is a
Right.
wild place, wild history. How was that interview for you there? What do you think about the ranch? Let me know.
I've had the pleasure to speak with Brandon on several different occasions, publicly, in interviews, and with the rest of the team. And as the years have progressed with their research, their ideas have definitely changed on the
Okay.
topic. But what's really interesting about this ranch is that there are many across the world that have very similar phenomena happen, where you're dealing with UFO sightings, orbs, portals, cryptids, strange problems with technology. Actually, with the new show Beyond Skinwalker, they've looked into that. And I think it really displays that the world is much more strange than we could ever imagine. But
Mhm.
why are there certain locations across the world where you have this little pinpoint where all the strange things are happening in this one or several different locations?
Mhm.
Could it be that the veil is just a little more thin there where you are dealing with this reality and another one? A really George Knapp wrote a really fantastic book way before Brandon Fugel bought the ranch, I believe in 2016, where he spoke to people a part of the Bigelow Aerospace era. Because before Brandon Fugel owned the ranch, it was owned by Robert Bigelow, a
Yes.
billionaire who received money from the government to research Skinwalker Ranch. But Bigelow he's still alive, has always had an interest in the paranormal and in consciousness. Now he has his own institute, the Consciousness Institute, where he gives scientists hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to give answers to Bigelow about consciousness, about life after death, and so on. So I think he was a really interesting candidate to look into that along with Bradshaw Ranch and a few other locations. But George Knapp created a rapport with Bigelow, did multiple interviews with him, wrote a book about what was taking place in Skinwalker Ranch during the Bigelow era. And what he explained was that scientists were seeing portals open, a different reality on the other side. Which is, I mean, I wish I was there to see that because
Right.
goals, that's amazing. Simultaneously, in places like Bradshaw Ranch in Sedona, there are dinosaurs that have run around that have been reported by witnesses.
Really?
Bigfoot, Bigfoot has been seen as well. And the question that I already asked, but I'm going to ask it again. Why is it happening in those locations? Is it a natural phenomenon? Was it created through technology? Well, if we look at ancient Native American legends, they have
Yes.
been talking about portals since the beginning. And there are certain areas, which they define as vortexes, to where the energy is just slightly different there and things are either able to manifest, magic, in their words, is able to happen. And I'm thinking, why did we lose that knowledge in today's world? I feel like that could be so useful, so powerful, so precious, but somehow we have lost touch with our ancestral knowledge that hasn't just
Mhm.
taken place in like Native American legend, but on a global scale.
Yes, yes, definitely. It's like we've lost our birthright. I think that's like one of our like all peoples, that's one of their natural birthright is to be able to interact with whatever the natives were doing in regards to the portals, all that stuff, exploring consciousness, because at the end of the day they're shamans. Whether it's North America, South America, Africa, they would go deep into the, I guess you could say, other realm through their consciousness, through different herbs and plants and things of this nature. And yeah, that's something that we've lost a long time ago, and I think part of it is because language is such a big thing. A lot of people don't realize how impactful language is, because as you alter language, you alter people's ability to think. If you take away language, people can't think a certain way anymore. So when you take away or you demonize or you make make seem silly. Terms like angels, terms like demons, terms like portals, and being all of that. As you make all of that silly, people stop thinking about it. And that's part of the reason you're asking why we lost it. It's, I think we stopped using that language. And UFO, UAP, interdimensional, all these things are good, but 1200 years ago, 2000 years ago, they had terms for all these things. It's just that we now look at all that as myth, but it's still happening to this day. Like everything you just explained sounds like it's from ancient mythical Greece, portals and all this stuff. It sounds absolutely ridiculous. But when you look at it, it's been happening for thousands and thousands of years. It's just, we look back at the history that we have available and we say, well, that was just nonsensical. They were a little primitive and they didn't know how to really explain it. That's all that is. And I think that's where our big mistake is that we think back then they were primitive, when in reality, I think they had access to something that we have to now use technology for in order to experience the same type of things. I think
That's a really good point, Colin.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah. I've been noticing that because, you talk about Skinwalker Ranch. We'll go back to Skinwalker Ranch, but when you talk about UFOs, I recently did an episode where I was listening to this interview with Diana Pasolka, Dr. Diana Pasolka, and she was talking about the 1200s with this guy. It was a Francis of ICIC, a CSC. Okay. And he had an interaction with a seraph, which is an angel. And there are depictions in these paintings of this seraph shooting beams at this guy. And they're going through his hands. They're hitting him in the chest. And I think they're hitting his feet as well. And he was so wounded that the church actually went and hid him. They didn't want anybody to see his wounds and what they were. He later succumbed to those wounds. But when you look into many abduction stories, or at least sightings, you see people getting something that is along the lines of radiation poisoning, where they have the blistering skin and the marks and all this stuff. And it seems like from their description of this monk in Italy in the 1200s, that's exactly what happened to him. He had the same type of markings, the same type of injuries. And it kind of just shows that this has been happening for a long time. Now you fast forward to Brazil, and I believe 1977 to 77 to 78. There is a place called, I don't know if you ever heard of it. I think it's called
Colares, Brazil.
Yeah.
My favorite case of all time.
Right? Because exactly like the 1200s, this thing is coming, this big light. And at first it's just kind of menacing them at the shoreline. And then eventually it's going into the town and it's shooting beams the exact same way. People are coming up with the marks exactly the way it's described. Francis got those marks back in the 1200s. And they seem like radiation poisoning. It's very odd. It's just back then they described it as a seraph. They described it as an angel. And today we're describing it as allegedly, like that's the first thing they'll put on that whole case that we're talking about. They'll say, allegedly this happened. And we don't really know. And yeah, they say that there was beams and everything, but it's the exact same type of thing, thousands of years later, it's still happening. So it's very interesting. It's just again, I think we just lost the language.
We have lost the language. Yes, there has been a lot of stigma, and it makes you feel silly when you look into it. But at the exact same time, people have never lost an interest in it. They just feel ashamed to have an interest.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. That is actually exactly what it is. That's why, a lot of these topics, people actually, tremendous amount of people love when I cover these topics. There's always people who rather me cover politics and whatnot. And again, it's just the silliness. Me, myself, I'm Christian. A lot of Christians feel like this isn't something that you should talk about. This isn't something you should be giving time, or they'll just classify it as demonic. And, my response is always like, but you believe Jesus passed away and then rose 3 days later. It's like, it's all supernatural. It's okay you're already in the spirit realm as you're reading the Bible and most scripture. You're already in the spirit realm. There's other realms and realities, heaven, hell, all of that stuff. So it's not a far cry to hear about Skinwalker Ranch and see that they were showing like other realities through portals. It's actually not that far of a stretch, but for some reason, some people it is. If I go back to Skinwalker Ranch, I just want to know, how do you feel about it? Do you think this is real, what they're saying? Do you think this is actual?
From their research and data, the answer would be yes. I
Yeah.
haven't been there. I would love to. I would absolutely love to go and, feel it out for myself, like literally every other viewer on planet Earth.
Yeah.
But based off the data alone, there is something going on there.
It's interesting. When you talk about native tribes, did you ever hear about when it came to Skinwalker Ranch that apparently there was some tribe and some of them kind of did some kind of dark magic and they kind of gave themselves over to something, and it's said that they are the beings that are running around in the Skinwalker Ranch area?
So they are called skinwalkers. It's not a term that Native Americans like using because it is believed that when you say it, you are actually attracting the
Oh
entities over.
no. Oh, don't
Yes,
say that when
yes.
I'm sitting in a dark room right now. Oh no.
I got to speak with Navajo Ranger John Dover, who had been on the show quite a few times, but living on the reservations, he would tell me that people would avoid saying that word like the plague, and they still do today.
Wow.
I've spoken to natives across Texas, not Texas, excuse me, Arizona and Colorado, and I'll kind of like drop it, just like a word here, just to kind of see if it makes a difference. Their eyes bulge out and they're like, Christina, you better stop right now. You do not want that
Oh,
entity coming. I'm like, okay. I respect
no.
you and I will not do it. But I did have to kind of like test it to see if that legend was still true, still
Mhm.
living, with them. And the answer is yes. Even if they're not living on the reservation and they are in any other location, they're
Yeah.
still very much against it. But to look to get into the legend there were two tribes in Utah, and they were always in war between one
Mhm.
another. That one tribe cursed the other. And there are different legends, and I can give you the two ideas of how these entities are created. But the original one, when it comes to the ranch in particular, it's believed that one tribe cursed the other and creating these entities, the Skinwalker. Now, there's other legends, depending on what tribe you look into, that sometimes a shaman will make a sacrifice to
Mhm.
become a Skinwalker, which is
Yeah.
kind of like almost like these immortal beings that are able to shapeshift. Then there are some ideas by other tribes that you make a deal with an entity in a different dimension that does your dirty work, like black magic. So there are different explanations for these skinwalkers depending on the tribe. And maybe we're dealing with the same thing, maybe we're dealing with different entities. That's up for you to decipher. But in the tribe in Utah, you have it's the Ute, and the other tribe is escaping me right now. But point being, one tribe cursed the other, creating this more dark environment across that area in Utah. So there's more to it, but that's information that I can provide right now on
Yeah.
that, and it
Yeah.
is very interesting to look into. But Native Americans always say, be careful on how far you look into that.
Wow. Wow. That is very interesting, even to this day. But that makes a lot of sense. Like just what you said, making a deal with an entity, that is not something that is just for that tribe in that part of the world. That is something that,
It's
I can't.
universal.
Exactly. You see it a lot. In fact, when I was saying I was going to bring up the occult, you actually see something very similar to that. Do you know who Jack Parsons is?
I heard the name, but the story is not following it in my brain. Tell me, please.
He is like the godfather of rocketry. So basically, Jack Parsons, JPL Labs, he is somebody who had no knowledge of rockets at all, and yet he was able to build these rockets, and he was incredibly well versed in this realm. Now, the thing that's the occult is that he was friends with Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was a known mystic, occultist type. Some even say, rather demonic, and, et cetera, et cetera. He was a very shadowy figure, we'll just say. And they were friends, and they actually did a lot of rituals together. So what a lot of people actually don't see is that in order for him to get his knowledge in rocketry, he actually did a ritual and attracted a being. And most of these beings, demonic in nature, etc., what they do have is access to incredible knowledge. So wherever their realm is, they are incredibly more advanced. And he got access to that information. Now, all of that sounds very weird, but when you realize that Werner von Braun was actually into the same type of thing, and he was the guy who worked for NASA, right? He was very into that. Well, he actually was a German scientist at first. He was brought over after World War II. Yeah. So he was actually into that. German scientists were very much into that, accessing a different realm for knowledge. They were some of the smartest. They were the smartest in the world at the time. Russian scientists were also accessing the occult for all this knowledge in regards to rocketry and all sorts of technology. Nikola Tesla actually is very open, well, at least was very open before he passed, about the fact that he would do certain rituals, get into a certain trance, and that's how he got access to all of the inventions that he would create. He said it all came from another realm. So that when you say that about that native tribe, it doesn't surprise me at all, because that's what people are doing. And I mean, even if you get deeper down the rabbit hole, you can even say, well, I wouldn't even say, you could say some musicians even say that that's what they're doing. And it's something that is very connected. Tech and the occult are actually, I think tech, the occult, and UFOs, UAPs as well, are all very, very connected. We just don't realize it.
And the same goes for monks and sadhus, where they get into a meditative state and they receive the answers that they were looking for in their spirituality. And I think it just really depends on what you're trying to tap into. We could even touch on the Ouija board or CE5, right? Can they not be one in the same? In my view, the answer would be yes. You don't know what you're connecting to, but I think it really deep down matters the intention that you have, something that we've also lost over the decades, if not over a century or two, where we don't have, when we do something, we don't have the same intention or mindfulness that our ancestors did. And I think that also really plays a role in the occult, in magic, both positive and negative, light and dark. It's something that also needs to be addressed when talking about this.
Yeah, that's exactly it, the intention, because they always say, I say it too, there's more than one way to God, right? So whether it's like this scripture you're going to study, this, there's more than one way to God. And it's the same thing when it comes to the dark entities that are also
available. That's why there's so many religions. You got to find your own path on how to get there.
Exactly.
But it doesn't mean that that one path is wrong or right. It's just one that works for you. And the same goes for researching the UFO phenomenon. Some prefer to look at the nuts and bolts. Some want to see the spirituality. Some want to see the historical. But they're all going to take you probably to the almost the exact same conclusion, that there is something beyond our consciousness, that there is something beyond our planet, and that we're really not that special. If anything, we're insignificant. And that puts it into perspective.
Well, I think, well, yeah, kind of to what you're saying, I think whichever way you go when you're looking at the UFOs, I think all the ways are starting to converge. And I think that the whole interdimensional discussion actually ended up taking very scientific minds who were into UFOs, and it started attaching them to very religious, faith-based people who were looking into UFOs. Because right away, as soon as you say other dimension, now all of a sudden you've intersected people like Jack Parsons, people like, the straight-laced, just looking into UFOs, just scouring the sky person, scientist type, logical type, and you've taken the faith people. Now they're all starting to intersect, and you're starting to hear the experiences. If you're open to looking into a lot of different things, you start hearing that the religious experiences of yesteryear or yester century are very similar to the abduction stories. The abduction stories are very similar to people who claim that they've interacted with things that are interdimensional or demonic or angelic. It's all starting to really, for me at least, because I do know quite a bit about the occult, it's all starting to make sense. Even when you told me about Skinwalker, I'm like, oh, that's very occultish. Like, I didn't realize how occultish it was. But yeah, it spells, right? That's
It does. And referring to angels and demons, because they didn't originate on Earth, therefore they are aliens. They come from a different dimension, heaven and hell, and wherever else you want to define them as.
yeah.
There's this idea, really, this dogma that religious people will not be able to really understand if we receive UFO disclosure. If we get some kind of disclosure, have it be catastrophic or have it be drip feed, they won't be able to handle it. I completely disagree. It is
Mhm.
because of their mentality, their teachings, the scriptures that they follow, believing in angels and demons. That in itself, I think, is a stepping stone for moving forward, regardless of the religion that you follow, the ideology that you have. If anything, those that are going to struggle the most will be the atheists.
Very, yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree. I mean, the most religious people I know in terms of like Christianity, even outside of Christianity, they're the ones who are like the Book of Enoch. Like, if you finally understand, like this is nuts. Like, if you read this and you understand where they're coming from and that they're still on this plane and they were destined to never go to heaven and never go to hell, and they have to stay here with all of us in the unseen. And though you're 100% right, those people are gonna have no problem. They're going to be like, oh, it came from another place. Okay. All right. I'm staying away from it, but I understand completely. They're going to get it. They're going to be like, is it a demon? I don't believe it's an angel. I only trust Jesus. But they're going to understand. They're not going to crumble like so many people in disclosure. I think like Hal Putoff, he was mentioning, I think it was Hal Putoff. He was mentioning the list, the cons and pros of
It
disclosure
was.
versus non-disclosure, and they were just saying, oh, there's just too many factors why we can't tell the people. And I'm not buying it. And you know what, maybe in his time it was true. I think today it's a different day, and I think people would be able to handle it. And I think the atheists, that's one. I think the people in power currently would have the hugest struggle. If you want to be seen as top of the food chain, and then all of a sudden this other thing has popped up, and now it's kind of looming in the food chain.
It
That's
definitely
hard.
diminishes the ego, that's for sure, because you're no longer on top.
Exactly, 100%, man. Skinwalker Ranch, that's a wild one to get into. You know what? It brings me to another question I had for you. And maybe it's Skinwalker Ranch, but who's the most out there guest that you've had so far? Out there in the tinfoil realm that you've talked to so far.
Put me on the spot, Colin. I'm trying to think. I've interviewed a lot of people, but over the years, and the people that I've spoken to or have been very credible, have had a good background. I wouldn't classify them as necessarily tinfoil hatted.
Well, I mean that's
Um,
what they classify us as. Even you, they'd be like, "This is a tin. Look at her. She has a spaceship behind her."
that's too bad because it definitely does now have a very negative connotation to it.
I know.
But regardless, I all of my guests, it's like being a mom picking your favorite child. They're all great. They're all my favorite.
Who have you interviewed where you're like, that like shook my reality? Like that was like, okay, wow, didn't expect all that.
You're really putting me on the spot,
It's
Colin.
hard. It's hard. I just wanted to know because you're talking to people who are just like I'm talking. Sometimes I'll talk to a journalist. Sometimes I'll talk to somebody who's in like medicine and this and that. But you're like staying right in that lane of interesting people. So I just wanted to know. I just wanted to know there.
Probably, okay, now I have one. I have one. Probably the team researching the Nazca bodies.
The Nazca bodies. What is that?
Or the Nazca mummies, maybe you're familiar with?
Oh,
Yeah.
those are the little guys? Three fingers,
Hmm.
three toes?
Yes. And there's actually some very large ones as well that are about 5, 6
Really?
feet tall. Yes.
Oh, so you talk to people who are
Who have
it
done the investigations. Yes, who have looked
really?
at them, who have done the tests, who are working in the background and in the foreground as well. Yes, I've had the pleasure to speak with them. It's a mixed bag. You have those from Mexico, those from Peru, those from the United States
Mhm.
as well. You have surgeons, lawyers, journalists, um, people that study like facial reconstruction and the brain,
Of course.
things like this. Probably the one that shocked me the most is his name was Dr. Edgar Martin. And what happened was so they've been researching this for quite a few years. Even a cardiologist, that one also came to mind. So you have this whole
Mhm.
team um, looking into this, doing very serious investigations. And while it's been very quickly brushed off as fake, as dolls, that was by design by the Peruvian ministry, where
Mhm.
they confiscated some dolls from an artist at an airport. And they said, okay, because these are fake, that means all the bodies that are being researched by Jaime Maussan, they're all fake. And in reality, that wasn't true. Actually, the Peruvian ministry won't even talk to the team. They won't do their own investigations. They'd rather run tests on these legitimate dolls that are made out of paper mache and bones, like animal bones, than the
Really?
real thing. So there's a lot of controversy with those bodies. I know that I have gone through heat just talking to people, just trying to get a better understanding as to what's going on. But as for what I do, being a journalist, I just want to cover the story and then let people make up their own minds on what they believe. But I'm going to collect as much data as I can and not cherry pick because that definitely affects the narrative and it creates high levels of bias that I try my best not to provide in my research, in my shows, or in the articles that I write. So when we're looking at these bodies, the reason to why Dr. Edgar Martin stands out the most is because he was doing investigations into the facial structures. Same with Ricardo Rangel, who is a biologist, who believes that some of these entities, like Maria, the one that's kind of like crouched, is actually a hybrid from thousands of 160, 100,000 years ago, mixed with human and monkey, referred to as the bonobo. But I'm getting distracted. Looking at Edgar
It's okay.
Martin,
Yeah.
the reason to why I keep bringing him up is because after doing his research, his investigations,
Mhm.
he mysteriously passed away in a car
No.
accident. His car drove off a cliff. The driver survived. Edgar Martin did not. And this was very recent. This took place back, I believe, back in November of last year.
Wow.
Yes.
Really?
So it added a lot of extra controversy to the entire thing, but that is never brought up when talking about the bodies. People say, oh, it's just cake. Oh, it's just paper mache. People have legitimately lost their lives. Now, is there a correlation between his research and his death? Well, on how this topic of UFOs has been going and has been for the last few decades, some might say yes, others might say it's just merely a coincidence. I cannot provide an answer, but I can allow your audience to make up their own minds on what they think.
Oh, I know my audience would say right away, we hear about someone driving off a cliff. We we definitely we come to a conclusion really quick there. I mean, especially because I didn't actually know this part because when it first dropped, this was months ago, maybe even longer. But when they first came out and they said they were fake, and it was like a
That's right.
quick thing. So I looked at
Very
it,
quick.
I was like, oh, they've already verified they're fake, like whatever. And now you're telling me that they just found dolls and then everything else they just kind of blanketed and said also dolls without
Yes,
even looking into it. That is
correct.
wild. That right
And
there is them trying to not dig so deep into this whole thing. So again, when you tell me that this, rest in peace
well,
passed away
there's
suddenly.
a little bit more, if you don't mind me explaining, is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there have been a handful of briefings on these bodies. The most famous one took place in 2023, where you had the Mexican hearing. Ryan Graves was there, and he was like, "What's going on?" That was when the world saw these bodies for a second time. We saw them back in 2017, but we saw this like again in 2023. Then in 2024, there was a smaller hearing in Peru And the Peruvian police attempt to seize the bodies through to the Peruvian ministry, and they weren't able to because the bodies weren't there. These doctors and scientists were just providing a presentation talking about their data, their research, which now papers are available. You're actually able to read what is going on with their DNA analysis, which is really remarkable, especially when I hate to plug myself, but I'm going to do it,
Yeah,
especially
of
listen
course.
to the interviews that I've conducted with some of these researchers that go into great detail on their conclusions based off of the data alone without providing any forms of bias, which I did translate from Spanish to English. So I
Okay.
recommend people take a listen to those. But so the police tried to seize the bodies. They weren't able to. And there have been multiple occasions, according to Jaime Maussan, that they have tried to take the bodies and have failed time and time again. And there's actually a lot more than just one, two, or three. There's about 10 or 12. And a university in Peru has also done investigations. The president of the University of Inca uh,
Mhm.
did some, like, spoke about it positively. He wanted to do investigations, lost his job.
Wow.
Connections are very strange here, and there's a lot more to it. It's been quite a few years now, so I'm trying to like pull as much as I can, but there is a lot to it, and
Wow.
it's not just dolls, it's not just paper mache. These are legitimate entities, human hybrid. We don't have an answer, but they, according to Dr. Ricardo Rangel, again, who's a biologist, he
Yeah.
believes that Maria in particular, now known as Mario, it's not a female, it's a male,
Okay.
is over 100,000 years old.
No.
Mm,
Really?
yes.
See what I mean? See what I mean when I say it's been around for so long? You know, like that's from, well beyond biblical times. So easily, if there was those ones there, possibly there were more. Maybe in the area where most of the Bible was depicted in, written from. You just never know. It's very very interesting, especially when you bring up Peru. Like as you were talking, I was like, that is a place where you brought up the statement, where the veil is very thin. That seems to be a place where the veil is very thin. So the fact that they're finding them within that area is huh, wild, wild
Very.
stuff. I didn't realize that, so I got to look into that a little more. I saw Jesse Michaels just did a big episode on that, and I was actually going to watch that soon. But I might have to look at your interviews instead. Might have to check those out because the DNA research is what's really interesting to me.
Oh,
Really, really.
as it should be. No,
Mhm.
I agree. People want the data. Well, we're beginning to receive that now. And so it's not just all funny talk, like, oh, how cool. It's like there's actual research being involved, actually, thousands of dollars behind the scenes to run these tests. That's not cheap by any means to run any form of DNA testing. So that's why it's been a bit of a slow process, but it is getting done.
Wow. Okay. All right. Very, very. I wasn't expecting that. I guess I just wanted to touch on, well, I have a bunch of questions, but I guess we should just jump back a little bit to David Grusch. What do you think about David Grusch? Now, when I first saw him, I did an episode called Joe Rogan just interviewed the biggest fraud in JRE history. Now, that was from me hearing about him for like, just a little bit of time. And as time went on, and so many high level and incredible long term people kept talking about him, I recently just made an episode called I Was Wrong About David Grusch. I think he is legit. What do you think about him?
Based off of his background, I think it's worth keeping an eye on him. His
Mm-hmm.
congressional testimony that he gave July 26, 2023,
Mm-hmm.
looking at it from a body language perspective, because I watched that
Mm-hmm.
hearing multiple different times. It was the first big hearing in 50 plus years. We got one in 2022 with the AOI MSG, and that was an absolute mess, where you had the two people, Scott Bray and Ronald Moultrie, saying, I don't know about this, I don't know about that. Maelstrom, never heard of it. They couldn't even pause the video at the right time. I was in pain. I was cringing that my stomach hurt so bad. But then we got this one with David Grusch, and that it really changed everything. That even today, 2025, we're still bringing him up. He set such a foundation for this conversation to be taken so seriously and legitimately that he deserves credit. He really, really does. So, looking at it from a body language perspective, he looked nervous. He looked scared, and he was very
Yeah.
careful with his words because of his background, because of his knowledge, and because of the investigation that he was going through to make sure that he wasn't infringing on any NDAs and following the proper UFO whistleblower protocols. While we all want people just to come forward and lay down all the best information, unfortunately, there is a legal process that you have to go through in order to be protected, to not go to prison, because there is a lot of very confidential information, especially when you sign an NDA of any form. So that also
Mhm.
adds a layer that people don't necessarily consider very often because we just want the information. We don't care who goes through fire. We just want the data, and then we'll forget about them, in 2, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
David Koch has been very different. He followed the protocols. He was very careful. He only gave very few interviews. I mean, like 2 or 3. And then he kind of disappeared from the media. But the times that he did speak out, he mentioned that he was threatened. His house was broken into, which I think adds a layer of credibility. He was very much in fear of his life, which, yes, could possibly be a narrative, but when he said it to Anna Paulina Luna and to Tim Burchett, which I like to say Tim Burchett, it just sounds better to me, so I'm going to say it like that. Um, he looked very nervous, and Luna and Burchett also highlighted that he's in fear of his life for him to come forward. We've also heard that from Michael Herrera as well, that there has been nothing positive since he came forward. He actually took a step back, not doing any more interviews, and instead opened up his own businesses, which is he just dropped his coffee company. Good on him. That's awesome. Like, do
Yeah.
good, buddy. But looking at David Grusch, and him now working as a special advisor for Eric Burleson's office, who,
Yeah.
as I had mentioned at the very beginning, has become the face for UFOs, is Grush feeding him information? Well, what we do know is, and maybe you remember this, that Eric Burleson went to Mexico City to talk about the Boogosphere and about the Nazca bodies. And I thought, why would an American politician go to Mexico City for this? That doesn't make sense. It's so strange. Yes, I can understand Stephen Greer going. That's not a big deal. Daniel Sheehan, okay, cool, whatever. But Eric Burleson, like, should she be in the US caring about American affairs, US
Mhm.
affairs? Well, David Grush had told Eric Burleson, and this is public knowledge, that he told Burleson, you should go to Mexico City. You should look at those bodies because it's very similar to the things that I have seen.
Mm.
And,
Wow,
and so
really?
he goes, yes, yes. Public information. You can find that online.
Wow,
I did a
wow.
whole show on that as well. So and I for all my shows I put sources on where I get that information. Also, they're embedded in my articles as well because I don't like just saying things out of thin air. It's very important to me to provide on where I got that information. And so when I saw that, I thought, this is crazy. Like, no way.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
can't be true. And according to Burleson, it was. So I
Wow,
think I
that's
think there
very
really
interesting.
is something to Grush to the
Yeah,
positive.
yeah. I agree. I agree. After some time and watching a bunch of interviews and just hearing all of the again high level people who were verifying how high level he was in
Right.
intel, I was like, oh, okay, like I guess I missed the mark here. And part of it was kind of body language because I did watch that as well. And I was
Yes.
like, what's going on with this guy? Like, this guy just seems off, from his first interview with News Nation to the Rogan
I think he has
interview.
autism, like a form of
That's
autism.
that's what Jesse Michaels said because they actually became good friends for like the past 2-3 years. They've been like very, very close. And that's exactly what he said. He's like on some kind of spectrum. And he's like, and that's why you see him, but he's super high like super, high level thinking. And that's why, so you got to look at him kind of the same way you would look at Elon Musk or like a Sam Altman, where you're like, they're communicating very oddly. And it's like, oh, okay, there's a reason behind that. I'm like, it all started making sense. And I was like, wow, I was actually very wrong about that guy. And the fact that he's on Eric's team is very interesting as well, because Eric is saying the interdimensional thing. Luna is also saying that. Grusch is also saying that. Going back to the occult, Grusch actually went with Jake Barber, who also claimed to have a pretty wild experience with UFOs. They went to it was called the UFO Summoning Summit, where, because Jake Barber, if you don't know, he verifies, or he says he can attract these UFOs with his mind. So they went to this summit where they all sit down, and again, talking about all of this past occult stuff, they get into some kind of trance. Some of them are even wearing weird eye covering masks of sorts, and they are saying that they can summon these things via their mind, which is very, very interesting. I found that very out there. I'm like, as soon as I saw, that was one of the things where I saw David Grusch involved in that, and I'm like, oh, okay, this guy's, he's legit. He's being very serious. Like, this is not something that you just bring up and you're just like, this is actually, you don't get to that level unless you've seen some stuff. Unless you've seen a lot of stuff, you can verify things. So yeah, I like Grusch a lot now. So I'm hoping one day you can interview him, because if I interview him, I'm just gonna ask wild questions about Bigfoot and stuff. I hope someone like
And why not? Sounds like fun. I'd watch it.
That's what I do. I like to get very out there, which brings me to my next question. What is a theory that you have? It could be about UFOs, about anything, that is just so out there, but it's just something that you think, maybe it's something you're coming across in your research. What theories, wild theories, have you been concocting as you go through your life, this interesting life that you have?
I wouldn't say it's a crazy theory, but just a theory is when we're looking at the vastness of our universe as a whole, this topic, for me in particular, has definitely put my life into perspective. And it sounds cliche, but let me finish. We're so insignificant in the vastness of everything that's taking place. There's so many mysterious things that are going on every single day that are happening in front of our eyes, but we're just not fully seeing it. But we're able to see it through our peripheral. There have been stories, maybe you've encountered this yourself, where like you're focusing on something and you see something kind of scurry from the side of your eye, like a little like black shadow or something. You've probably seen it once in your life, Colin.
Yeah, a bunch.
Yeah, it's actually not that strange if you think about it. I think these little things for me provide me this level of curiosity, this level of hope, but also it diminishes the ego in so many ways that I think what I'm doing right now is so important. This, that, and the other. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to wash the dishes. No, you don't. They can just sit there for a few days. It's no big deal. The world's going to end. This topic has given me so much. It's not even a theory, it's just a fact to me that I really am grateful for researching this. And it also displays that if I really were to encounter extraterrestrials of some form or interdimensionals, could be an angel. I don't know. I would be like so over the moon. I'd say just take me. That'd be so great. Let's just go. I'm chill leaving here, never coming back, because there's so much darkness here on planet Earth. So much suffering, so much sadness. It's really heartbreaking when you look at the news in those ways, which I try to avoid to the best of my ability, but it's hard sometimes. The topic of UFOs, the UFO phenomenon, the strange and mysterious, the paranormal, it gives myself, and I think so many other people, this outlet, this hope, this lightness that we're not always have to be in this physical form. There's so much out there, and it's just doing the research, maybe getting that technology, maybe going into a deep meditation to kind of figure it out. But I really do love this topic. Really.
That's really cool. The perspective thing of all this. Yeah, I guess that happens with me as well as I go into all this, because I'm not just like, I'm paranormal, near death experiences, like the other side, simulation theory, all of that stuff. So for me, yeah, there's a lot of perspective. I've actually, funny enough, it sounds very odd, but through all of this research, through all those different things I just mentioned, I've come to a greater comfort when it comes to passing away and my own mortality. I've
Yes.
found a deeper comfort in that. Um, Pretty much because congressmen are verifying that like other dimensions are real, right? So that gives some hope for heaven as well. But more so, it's just it like you touched on it. You said you're not in this physical body forever, and I really do believe that. Like I'm starting to see like this is not. I don't think that this is the end. I don't think everything we're doing here in the dishes and everything you're talking about, I don't think that this is it. I think there's more past this. And as I research other cultures, whether it be native, whether it be ancient Egyptian, they keep talking about like there's certain native cultures that look at passing away as waking up. They say that that is the great awakening. You awaken, you know. I've been studying near death experiences, and one thing that one guy said to me, really, like I think about it like in the shower all the time. He's like, he's going to the other side. And as he's going to the other side, he says, I can't believe I thought I was that person back there. I can't believe I thought that that was my wife. He said, like, it was the weirdest thing to hear in one of those experiences. He's just like, I can't believe I thought this. And he said he was around all these orbs and he was moving through this thing. And there was this whole weird, like, he met up with people and they knew him, but he couldn't remember them. And they were all laughing about it. And it was, it's just so interesting to think about. Like, after I interview you, I have to talk to a woman who is a hospice nurse. So she deals with people. She ushers them into the other side and makes sure that they're comfortable. And yeah, it's just very interesting, this type of work, this type of study.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Whenever I hear people mention that they're a nurse or a doctor, that's the first question I ask. Have you seen ghosts at the hospital? And 9 out of 10 times they're like, yes, but we don't really talk about it. It's just a part of the day-to-day life on the job. And I thought, what are the protocols? Like, tell me more. And they're so hesitant, but nurses, doctors, those that work in the hospice, they are dealing with it on a daily basis. And
Yeah.
sometimes they might just like avoid a certain room, but they're going about their lives like it's not even a big deal.
Yeah, it gets to the point with hospice nurses. I'm going to be talking to one soon, but I already have verified when they're becoming when they're in school or they're doing their placement, there is actually a pamphlet that, and not even just them, also families. There's a pamphlet that people are given, so you could expect. They'll say expect that you're going to see your loved one talking to loved ones that have passed. You're going to see them reaching for them. You're going to see them having full on conversations with them. So like talk about like dealing with it daily. Like this is what hospice nurses constantly see. And there's even, there's something called like the death reach where they reach up.
Yeah.
And one guy in the Navy, he was with his friend while he was passing. And it was, cancer and everything like that. So it wasn't like they were on the battlefield. But right before he passed away, he reached up. He was paralyzed on one side. And for somehow he was able to reach up both hands and just fell back and just passed away. And like that was his last action. It's just it's made me so hopeful in that regard. That's definitely what it's done for me. And it's also opened me up to the fact that, there's a lot of people who are accessing very dark things around us. They're accessing it, and a lot of that sadness that you're seeing, it has to, I believe it's linked to that. A lot of people are playing with a lot of dark arts that shouldn't be, I think. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird stuff. Now, have you ever had anything paranormal happen to you?
I have. Yes,
Have
actually,
you?
my parents have as well. I just learned very recently, which there's this idea that UFO sightings in particular can be generational. With the paranormal, well, just gotta be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
But my favorite story, I haven't had that many strange encounters. And something that you realize when you talk to researchers on this topic, they seem to have less experiences than those that don't care about the topic at all.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
irony is very real.
Yeah.
But I'll make this story very short. It's one of my favorites. It's called The Haunted Vacuum Story. My freshman year in college, I didn't have enough money to buy a vacuum. So I asked one of my classmates, I think she was a junior. Can I just borrow your vacuum? Just for a few hours. My place is a mess. I had a cat at the time, and I gotta clean it up. She's like, yeah, sure, no problem. I pick it up from her place, put it in the back of the car, and I'm driving home, and I'm thinking, I feel like there's something in the car with me. But at this time, I wasn't really that deep into researching the paranormal and UFOs. Just surface level. So I didn't think much about it. So I just keep driving. But I just felt like something was there. I put it in
Mhm.
the corner. I get home. I put it in the corner of my apartment, and I'm preparing to get the place ready to vacuum. Now, during this time frame, I had a very, very large, like heavy candle in a glass jar on the toilet in the bathroom, and it would never move. Okay, ever.
Yeah.
And there's no earthquakes where I live. Okay, no
Okay.
storms. Like the place shouldn't move.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, and my cat was not in the bathroom. The candle, this huge, heavy candle, falls into the trash. And I thought, huh, that's weird. Whatever. Go to the bathroom and I put it back. It falls a second time when I wasn't looking. Then I start kind of worrying, panicking a little bit of like, okay, what is going on? I brought Satan home with me. Freaking out. So what's the first thing I do? I go to my internet knowledge and I start sprinkling salt like I am marinating the carpet. Okay, like salt here, some salt here. The devil can't. They can't hurt me. I'm putting salt. I hate salt. But I didn't put it in lines. And if anything, I was trapping it inside
Mm.
with me while I
Yeah.
went home. So that didn't work. So I said, okay, let me go to the internet and see what I can do. So I type in on YouTube, give me some sounds that will remove this entity from my place.
Mm.
I play this very frequency type music and I hear screeching noises come out of the speaker. And I was like, oh my gosh, what was that? I rewind it. The screeches weren't there the second time.
Oh no. Oh no.
So I immediately call my classmate, not even my friend, my class. I'm like, hey, I want to return your vacuum. She's like, no, drop it off in the morning. I said, no, I'm dropping it off tonight. I do not want it. It is possessed. She's like, no, no, it's so late, Christina, come in the morning. So I'm over here, I'm crying, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? So I got the vacuum, I put it in the storage unit, and I said, look, buddy, you're gonna be there until I wake up, and we're gonna drop you back home to your owner. Do not bother me while I sleep.
Wow.
The sun comes up, the crack of dawn. I am speeding to this girl's place. Drop it off at the front door, and I'm out. Never spoke to her again. I
Wow.
felt really bad actually, but I was like, I'm just not in the mood for this.
Wow.
Years later, I didn't hear from her. I never saw her again because she was just a classmate. I saw her at the grocery store and I was like, I know you. You're
Yeah.
famous on the internet because I tell this story so often. And I didn't say anything to her. I just walked the other way and never looked back.
She probably knew and she was trying to pawn it off on you. That's what it is. That's how it works. You
Maybe.
got when sometimes you have an object, and it's so funny because I had an interview with someone who was kind of a mystic in a sense, and she was talking about the fact that a lot of cultures believe that if you have something for a long time and you
Mhm.
pass away, that you could end up inhabiting that thing in a very weird way. So like when you tell me about that vacuum, it's like I wonder who owned it before, what it was around, is it
Right.
something, maybe she was, maybe it's a family thing, she brought it along, and maybe it's upset because now it's not with a family member, and all of a sudden it starts
I'm
throwing candles
nice,
around.
Colin. I could have given it snacks, lighted up some nice candles for it. Like I'm not bad. We could have been friends. I could have interviewed it, but no, I chose not to out of panic during that time frame. Now things would be different today. I would have all of my communication devices, right? And I'd be like, okay, tell me where you're from. What are you,
Yeah, of
what's
course.
your name?
Just film the washroom, just start filming what's going on in the washroom.
Exactly.
You know how many views that would get? That'd be crazy.
0, because nothing would happen.
Your first 10 million view video. That's what would happen. Dang, you kidding me?
That's cool.
That's exactly what would happen. It'd be nuts. But yeah, that's very interesting. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, like a lot of people don't have that's paranormal. I know it seems like some people are gonna like, oh, a candle fell and this and that, but that is the realm of paranormal. It's not always an actual demon comes to you while you're in bed and scratches you. It's not always that. Sometimes it's very, very, very subtle stuff. Very
Right.
interesting. I'm very open to it because I have on one side I have Cuban, and they're very into the whole stay away from dark magic. And on the other side is Caribbean, and they're very much like that too. They see voodoo and stuff, and tell you to stay away from it. So I've heard stories like this and even worse. So I'm super open to it. Some people don't believe in it at all. I'm a full blown believer. And I think it's generational. Like you said, I think there is a generational aspect to it. If you come from a people that are either practicing it or around, like it's in their culture, and you're not that far removed from that culture, again, it's like you said with the veil being very thin. I think it's very thin. For me, it's just grandparents and dad were Cuban, mom all Caribbean, right? So it's not that far away where they were
Right.
around people who were doing voodoo and trying to stay away from that and being very superstitious. Not very far away at all for me.
I'm guessing you don't practice that stuff, right?
One time I stay away from that stuff. One time I was doing it unknowingly. I was doing some odd pagan stuff at a dark time in my life. Had like an altar. I was meditating with doing a lot of flame staring, all this weird new agey stuff. And luckily I met up with my sister, and my sister is actually, she's a witchy type of person. She knows all about that stuff. And I tell her what I'm doing, and she's like, that's pagan. You're doing like pagan stuff. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize. But so I stopped. But before I saw her, and I was in bed. I've told this story before so many times, but there was this huge pressure on my head, loud sound, loud like like loud like in the movies where a bomb goes off and then the person
Mhm.
can't hear anything and there's just like this buzzing. It was like that. I was sweating and it felt like something was like trying to get into my head. And I look up, well, I fight it, and then I move, but my body didn't move. It was like my soul jumped out of my body. And I roll onto the ground and I look up, and there is this slick back haired, all black being on top of my body. And it was the scariest thing I have ever gone through. And I guess my soul, astral body, was trying to crawl away, and then it just disappeared. Like it was coming after me, disappeared, and then I woke up and I was just in my bed. It was the weirdest thing. Nothing like any dream I've had. It was wild, and I couldn't sleep properly for like weeks after. I kept the lights on. It was bad. It was very, very bad. But then after talking to a lot of people, they're like, you were doing psychedelics, you were being very open, you were opening up your mind too much, you weren't, exactly what you said, weren't paying it the proper reverence, the proper respect that they would pay it in those ancient cultures. I was just kind of doing whatever I wanted to do. And yeah, I paid the price there. So that was my most paranormal thing. One other thing that happened to me that was kind of paranormal. I was in a washroom. This actually might even sound worse. I was in a washroom, same room, this basement. I think this basement's very dark. It's my
It's
mom's
always the
basement.
basement.
Yeah, I stay away from this basement even to this day. If we go visit my wife and my kid, we go visit, I'm like, we're not going in the basement. We're not going to the washroom in the basement. We're going upstairs. I was in this washroom and I started moving around like this. Like I started doing that, and it was almost like something was pushing me, and I could not get my balance. I was not high. There's nothing wrong with me. And it happened for like 5 minutes, to the point where I was like, I want to stop moving like that. It was the weirdest. It was like I was getting pushed around, pushed and pushed and pushed. And it stopped. And I was like, I said out loud, I'm like, whatever that was, I'm like, don't do that again. I said it out loud. I was like, do not do that again. And that was a weird experience.
I can't even imagine. That does sound pretty freaky.
You're right. It felt like I was being pushed around, just like pushed in circles, pushed and pushed and pushed. It was very, very freaky. So at the end of the day, what do you think these UAPs, UFOs are? Do you think they're from another planet? Do you think it's interdimensional? Is it a combination of the two? Because as I learn about time travel, it's like if you go fast enough, you're actually slowing down time and you're moving through time. That's kind of what these aliens could be doing. What do you think these UFOs, UAPs are?
I think we're dealing with a mixed bag of eggs,
Yeah.
magic Skittles. I don't know what that saying is, but a mixed bag of something. Um, we're dealing with it all. I think we're dealing with interdimensionals. We're dealing with physical nuts and bolts, like physical entities from a different planet. I think we're dealing with our own technology that maybe we have gained from these other intelligent beings.
Mhm.
Crash retrieval programs that has been spoken about by Jake Barber and by David Grusch, just to name a few. We cannot place all of our eggs in one basket. We're dealing with all these different types of phenomena that make the conversation very confusing to talk about. But I think it'd be very narrow-minded to believe that we're only dealing with one of them.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I always say whenever I'm talking to somebody, the truth is probably so much wilder than we realize. And that would be it. That exactly what you just said, that it's a little bit of everything, that there are off-planet things, there are interdimensional. It is some of us accessing, however we get this technology, maybe re-engineering, et cetera, et cetera. I it it's probably a mix of everything. It's probably way more wild than we understand, and that will, and we might never understand. I don't know. I mean, the disclosure is coming at a fast rate, and if it keeps going like this, then yeah, we're gonna know some real interesting stuff in the next year or so, 2 years.
I hope
Definitely
so.
feel it.
2027 seems to be like a repeated year over and over again. Something fake, something real, end of the world. Don't know. But
Yeah,
maybe we will be able to see what's going to go on. But people are really mentioning 2027.
yeah. I've heard that a lot. I heard I think Jeremy Corbell.
Jeremy Corbell said it's going to be fake disclosure,
Yes.
like a fake invasion.
Yeah.
Lou Elizondo's new attorney said it's going to be some kind of end of the world deal. Some say that it's going to be like aliens are coming in 2027.
Wow.
So we just got to be here to see what's going to happen. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
yeah. I wonder because that's also, it's funny enough, that's also on track for Elon Musk taking Neuralink and attaching it to AI and also giving people robotic limbs and giving them the ability to see infrared and color spectrums that we've never been able to see before.
That'd
It's
be
like,
interesting. I will say that Musk has been behind schedule on a lot of things that he's mentioned. So I don't
of
know
course.
if you come up with 2027 being the year for that new Neuralink developments. He did want people on Mars in 2025, and we haven't gotten even close to that. So if that does happen, it would be interesting to see who's going to sign up for that kind of stuff first. It's only been a few people that have actually put a neurochip in their skull, and there have been positive and negative results, but public, like in the media, right? They've been more positive than negative, Maybe by
Yeah.
maybe not, don't know, can't answer that. But
Mhm.
I will mention that when it comes to timelines and schedules from Elon Musk or from the US government, I probably would delay it by 6 months to 4 years.
Maybe 6 months to 4 years. We'll see. We'll see. I think part of me thinks that you're right about that. And then another part of me thinks that, like you even touched on it, that there's more positive than negative in the media.
Right.
And I think there's also more developments that they come up with that they don't really share publicly. Like, I think he was doing this to humans before he said he was doing it to humans. You know, I just do. And I think when there's a development, they won't, like, just like Sam Altman. I think he's probably hit on AGI and he's just like, I'm not telling everybody. Like, why would I tell everybody? This is the most powerful thing ever. The government's going to take it away from me the second I say I have it, you know? So it's interesting. We'll see. We'll see. But that's going to be, like, it seems like aliens, interdimensional AI being put in people's brains, all going to coincide around the same time. It's going to take this timeline to a whole different place. It's going to be
And
wild.
then will we be interdimensional? So we're able to tap into an AI type consciousness.
Right. Because then, yeah, that's a good question, right? That touches on the simulation theory and everything. Like,
It does.
yeah, what is interdimensional when it comes to us just being in a different reality, being jacked into something. All of a sudden, I don't know. It gets out of control. Anyway, we're heading up on 90 minutes here. I wanted to be a little early with it. I'm almost to the second, but thank you so much. And we're going to go over by like a minute. I just want to pull up your YouTube channel really quick,
Okay.
just so everyone can actually see it. I would be devastated if I didn't get to do that. Where is it? Oh, it's weird. Cristina Gomez, ladies and gentlemen. There she is. All right, let me just pull this up here. Screen share quickly. And what else are you working on? What else do you want to start doing? What do we see happening for you soon?
Well, I do cover UFO news daily, trying to look at everything that I possibly can, especially in the world of politics internationally. We know that Japan is creating their own UFO task force just to mirror the United States. So we're looking into that as well. But the best place to find me is on my YouTube channel at Cristina Gomez or on my website at ufonews.co, not .com, .co. There you can find videos, podcasts, and all the articles that I write that are bite-sized information. All the sources are embedded in there as well to keep everyone up to date as to what's going on. And that website, ufonews.co, is an aggregate website. So anytime UFOs are mentioned in the news, it will pop up there and you can actually see it. It just took a second to load. So it is a great resource for UFO researchers to stay involved and up to date as to what's going on internationally.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, this is incredible. You've built something really, really incredible here. I was really surprised. Like I've been grinding at it. I don't meet many other people who are doing the daily uploads. So, shout out to you. I know it's very hard, but you're doing a great job. And it seems like you're building a team. I gotta get some tips from you how to build a team. Because right now it's just me and my sweat equity, and that's it. That's all I got going on right now. So I'll have to get some tips from you. But guys, this is Cristina Gomez. Please go like and subscribe. People forget how important it is to like the videos as well. Like and subscribe. Check her stuff out. And that's it. Let me just